How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. What I've got for you guys today is something that is going to be focused very much on beginners to PvM and just very basic stuff. The reason I'm saying this now is because if you're someone who is doing pretty well in PvM, you're getting towards the end game, this video may have very little useful stuff for you. But I mean, it's still worth a watch to see if there's anything in here that you didn't know about, I suppose. But otherwise, yeah, just a heads up, this is going to be very basic and very beginner. The reason for this video is I actually recently helped someone improve at Vindicta, and it was on our video, a coaching video that I did recently. But I also noticed quite a lot from that as well that I figured would be worth talking about in a different video. What I noticed is there's a lot of stuff that probably quite a lot of people don't know about or just don't consider doing when they are beginners to PvM. So I wanted to mention in this video all the things that a beginner should know as absolute basic stuff that will help you out a hell of a lot in PvM. So if you are getting into PvM and you don't do this sort of stuff, then it is going to help you out a lot. And that's basically the point of this video. I wanted to just make sure that everyone understood the basics and all the little things that will help out like so much, and go through all those, explain why you want to use them and the best way to use them, and then hopefully it does help out quite a lot of people. But yeah, for you guys that are experienced in PvM, don't expect to be learning a hell of a lot in this video. With that being said, let's get going, shall we? So what I'm going to do is try and put these in an order that does make sense. We're going to start off from the very beginning, which is going to be setting up your abilities. Most people are going to be using Revolution at this point, which is absolutely fine, and I wouldn't really expect it to be much different for many people. Not too many people are going to start off with full manual, basically. So the reason I'm going to talk about abilities first, and like I say, this is very basic, very beginner stuff, we have to start here. We just do. So abilities are like the most important part of everything, right? If you're not using the right abilities, if you're not using abilities, then your damage is going to be so much lower. You're going to struggle out like a hell of a lot. So what I will suggest you do is, if you haven't already, read through what your abilities do. If you're on range, if you're on magic, it doesn't matter. Just have a read through the combat style that you're going to be using and understand what the basics of those abilities are. For example, you have abilities that do damage over time, which is called bleeds. Then you also have abilities that do stuns, and you have abilities that like bind your target. And then you also have abilities that will have secondary effects that will increase the damage if you used it on a stun target, for example. There's so many different things. Wild Magic will hit twice, Asphyxiate will hit 4 times. These are the sort of things that you're going to want to know, because it will help you out in understanding what's actually happening in the fights. If you don't understand what's happening and why in a fight, that's going to be a big impact to your actual PvM gameplay. It just is. It's going to help you out a lot to understand what's going on. After you understand what the abilities do, the next important thing is, especially if you're on Revolution, is to make sure that you have your action bar set up in a way that makes sense for Revolution. What Revolution does is it will automatically fire off the ability, checking if the previous or the first ability is available. It will check the first one. If that's available, it will use it. If not, it will check the second one, then it will check the third and the fourth and the fifth until it finds an ability that is not on cooldown, and it will always use that first. For example, I have not used Deep Impact yet because it's always found another one here. So the way Revolution works is it will prioritize the earlier on abilities. It's really important to make sure this is set up properly, because if you're using random abilities at random times in a random order, it is going to affect your damage, the DPS output that you can do, like so much. And it is very important to have a good DPS rotation set up, so the best you can on Revolution at least. Now, you may be using Revolution plus, you may be using normal Revolution. The difference between these is Revolution plus, you put your thresholds inside the action bar at the beginning, and you'll let Revolution use your ultimates, use your thresholds, and maybe even use your defensives. That's fine if you want to do that. That's absolutely fine. I would suggest, though, personally, if you can, get used to just using Revolution for just your basic abilities and then manually using your thresholds. That would be what I suggest normally. But if you are wanting to use Revolution plus, then that's absolutely fine. What I will suggest you do is head over to the wiki and just sort of have a look through the Revolution bars that are on there and set up one from that. They have suggested bars. I will show them on screen, and I will leave a link for the actual wiki page in the description. Make sure you've got them set up in a way that makes sense, and then sort of read through the abilities once you've set it up to understand why they're in that order. For example, you may want to have Impact before Rack, because then that way you'll use the Impact ability, then your character will use the Rack ability, and that will mean that it increases the damage if the target is stunnable. That's just one example. There's a lot of other things as well, but we're not going to go through the whole setting up of action bars in this video. So what I'll suggest you do is just check on the wiki, which I will link, and obviously I'll show you on screen. And then also, if you're really still struggling with that, jump in my Discord. There'll be a link in the description for that too, and ask in there for any help. People are very helpful in there. People will be happy to help. And if you don't get a response and you're really sort of thinking like, no, it's taking a while, I really want to get this done, send me a DM on Discord, and if I get a chance, I will absolutely happily help you out and try and figure that out. As long as I don't get like 2,000 people DM me, which I highly doubt I will, then I am more than happy to go through those and help you out as quick as possible. If I get 2,000, I'll still help, but it'll just take a lot longer to get back to you. Anyway, so yeah, make sure you understand what the abilities do. Make sure your evolution bar is set up properly. That's going to be your most important thing first, okay? This is very important. Make sure this is done properly. The next thing I wanted to talk about is going to be the skills that you're probably going to want to have. Most people will actually have these skills if you're watching this video and you're wanting to get into PvM. But for those of you that don't, it is really important to get these skills. It's going to help you out a hell of a lot. Now, you don't need them absolutely 100% all of the time. If you're doing things like God Wars 1, you're not going to need all these skills. If you're working on things like God Wars 2 and above, Araxor, Next, that sort of stuff, you're going to want these because it's going to help you out like more than just it'll give you a bit more damage. It's going to make learning easier. It's going to make your life just way more easier basically, and that is definitely something you want to do as a learner. So the skills I'm talking about is basically things like herb lore and summoning and prayer. These three skills are so important, and the reason they're so important is herb lore gives you overloads which boosts your damaging stats by quite a lot. For example, your attack, strength, defense, range and magic levels will all go up, and they stay up as well. They are incredibly useful, and for someone who's getting into PvM and taking it seriously, if you don't have them, you definitely want to get them, and I will suggest that you work on these as fast as possible. The next one would be to unlock ancient curses and get your prayer level up as well. Level 95 prayer is ideal, and that is the sweet spot. That's where you want to be at to be able to use those highly damaging curses. They are very useful and so important in part of PvM, so if you don't have that as well, definitely work towards that too. I know these are high levels, but if you're wanting to get into high level bossing eventually, you're going to want to have them. Prayer you can kind of leave out a little bit. You don't have to use them straight away. If you have protection prayers, they'll be absolutely fine for a little while you work on getting a bit of money, but I would honestly suggest trying your best to get to 95 as soon as possible. After that, the summoning skill, ideally you want to have this at 96. This is really high as well. 96 summoning is expensive. It will take a long time to get all the charms, but 96 gives you access to a yak, which is brilliant for learning, but it also gives you access to DPS familiars. We'll be talking about familiars and auras and all that sort of stuff later on as well, but honestly, 96 summoning is the sweet spot for summoning levels as well, because you're going to be using a yak and a Ripper Demon for the majority of all your PvM in the future. So far, the only two familiars I really use outside of like Nihils for just Nex is a Ripper Demon and a yak, depending where I'm going. So 96 summoning is definitely ideal. However, before that, you can get away with 67, as that does give you a beast of burden that is pretty decent, and you can fill that up with a bit of food as well, so it kind of gives you like a weaker version of the yak. Other than that, of course, for the actual combat stats, the higher the better. If you can have 99, then have 99. If you have 90 plus, that's probably a pretty decent place to be. 85 plus, okay, you're kind of pushing it a little bit there, but you can probably get away with most lower level stuff with that, as long as you have the weapons to go with it too. But these skills are something I would definitely recommend you having, or definitely being close to when you are trying to get into PvM properly, because they're going to be so important. Overloads are important, Ripper Demons and yaks are so important, and having the tier 95 curses unlocked is so damn important. They will take a long time to get these skills, guys, it will, but it is something that you're going to have to do at some point. Alright, so once you've sorted out your abilities, you have a revolution bar set up, you have an action bar set up if you're using full manual, and you understand what the abilities do, and you've got the levels that you know you need, and you're working towards other ones that you may want to get. The next thing you're going to want to do is talk about gear and sort of think about what sort of gear you can get your hands on, and maybe even just look at what gear you've already got and see whether that's going to be in a position that's worth using. The basic thing that you want to know of this is when you buy an upgrade, you're going to want to upgrade your weapons first. Prioritizing weapons is really important because it increases your accuracy by a lot, increases your damage by a lot, and it's going to be the most important part. That being said, armor and all the other stuff is still really important as well, and you will have to sort of think about what's going to be worth the next upgrade for yourself. If you're getting beaten the living hell out of when you do a boss, then maybe it's worth getting some better armor. If you are just missing a couple of effects, a little bit of extra damage, then accessories like your necklace and your ring and all that sort of stuff is going to be pretty useful as well. There is specific upgrade orders that you can find on places like the PvMe Discord, so I'll link that down below as well, because that'll be really useful. But again, if you're wondering about gear and you're not too sure about what you should get next, hop in my clan as a guest. It is called the Inits, or jump in my Discord. There'll be a link in the description for that too, and just ask in there. People are always happy to give a little bit of advice and help out people with that too. But there's not much more to say about gear. Obviously, the better the gear that you can get, the better off you are, but like I say, prioritize your weapons first and then work on the other stuff after that in whichever order you feel is most important next. Gear is going to be important to an extent where you cannot do a certain boss without a certain amount of gear, because you're just going to get the living hell beaten out of you. But it usually drops off pretty quick. So once you get access to like tier 90s, for example, tier 90s will carry you through the entire game and absolutely fine. Like, you don't have to have tier 95s, you don't have to have tier 92s. A tier 90 weapon, it will be absolutely fine to do most bosses in the game. So it does stop at some point where you don't need that absolute best in slot gear, and you're just sort of working on it just for extra upgrades. The same goes for armor as well. Once you get past God Wars 1, God Wars 2 armor, you're usually okay for a while, and then eventually you're going to want things like tier 90 armor. Once you do get your hands on things like tier 90 armor, you're not going to need to worry about anything else for a hell of a long time. Next up, I wanted to talk about auras. Auras and familiars. I'm going to tie these in together, but we'll start off with the auras. Auras are super important, and I've noticed that a lot of people don't use them. You should use auras. You definitely should. You have some specific auras in the game that are going to help you out a lot, and they're called DPS auras, or accuracy auras. There's other ones as well that you're going to pick up eventually, things like things that will help you with your adrenaline, all that sort of stuff, but don't worry about them just yet. We don't want to overwhelm you. You've got DPS auras, which include your dark magic, and then you've got your maniacal, your reckless, and your berserk aura. These all give accuracy and damage output, but you will take more damage when you use these. So you have to sort of trade off a little bit of your defense for getting a lot of extra damage. These auras are really useful, and they'll probably be, these three at least, will probably be your most used auras at some point in the game. However, early on, you may want to stick to things like Supreme Runic Accuracy, or the same goes for Supreme Sharpshooter Aura. I think there's an accuracy one for melee as well, but these just give accuracy. They don't give any increased damage, just pure accuracy, and they don't drop your defense level either. So these are super useful for beginners, and in certain situations where you are missing quite a lot, these will be really useful. However, it is important to note that these other three auras will increase your damage by a lot more than the normal accuracy ones do. So if you're in a certain situation where you don't seem to be using a lot of food, ideally you want to use these three auras, because getting through the kill a lot quicker will actually end up meaning you use even less food, so it all sort of balances out. If you can kill the boss quicker, you're taking damage for less amount of time, you use less food. That's just how it works, right? So usually DPS is king, and using these three auras will be very important. Then again, like I said earlier, you have dark magic, and you also have Majora aura. If you have access to the Majora aura, you have to buy this with bonds, I believe. Like 3 bonds, I think, will unlock it. It is definitely worth getting at some point, as it does increase your damage by 5% for all combat styles, and it is something worth using when you're off, when these are all on cooldown and stuff. I use it quite a lot. And dark magic is another great DPS aura as well, which will increase damage, will do damage over time, constantly to your target, as long as you're damaging it as well. Knowing what auras do what and using a DPS aura in certain situations are going to be really important. If you're not using an aura, you're missing out on a hell of a lot of stuff, and you'll notice a difference big time. If you go to next without an accuracy aura, or without one of the DPS auras, using reckless for example, you will be missing so freaking much. As soon as you throw the aura on, you will notice the difference big time, and it's going to save you so much time, so much effort, and it's going to make your life so easy. So don't be scared to try out these DPS auras. What I would suggest you do is start off with an accuracy one, and then if you seem like you're doing okay, your food isn't going down super quick, and you're doing fine, then chuck on one of the other auras, one of the DPS auras, and see how you do with that. And if you do absolutely fine still, you will notice, damn, this is a big difference. Auras, super important. Always PvM with auras. I will not do PvM without an aura. If it's on cooldown, I'll reset it from the Wars shop. I won't do a boss without an aura. They're just too important. They do too much, so make sure you're using auras. The next thing was familiars. Like I said earlier, you pretty much have 2 options. As a high level player, you're only really ever going to be using a yak or a Ripper Demon. So we'll get one of these out each, and we'll talk about them differently. These are the 2 familiars that you will use as an endgame PvM'er. There's other ones that you will use in certain situations, but they're not really worth talking about in a very basic beginner guide. So a yak and a Ripper Demon are like your cement that will hold everything together. This is what you're going to use most of the time. I rarely use anything else apart from a Nihil if I'm going to next. So a yak, you summon this, it will give you a full inventory of food more, which is actually more than what you can hold. I believe it's 30 spaces. You can fill this up with food, and basically if you run out of food in the fight, you can just take it straight out of your yak by clicking this button here, and it puts it in your inventory, fills your inventory up again with food, and just means that you can just go back to eating through those mechanics, and you can survive a lot longer in a fight. The yak, super important. You can use that if you're struggling with surviving in a boss. You just feel like you're running out of food way too soon. That's when you would want to use a yak. The next one that you can use is a Ripper Demon. Now, People are scared to use Ripper Demons, they're scared to use DPS Familiars, and I understand why. However, there is something you need to consider. So if you summon a Ripper Demon, what it will do is it will attack the target that you attack, and it will deal damage. So we don't have runes at the moment, so I won't attack, but you'll see my Ripper Demon will start attacking the target, and it will start doing damage. Now, Ripper Demons do a lot of damage. You just saw it does 3 hits there, yeah? If I give it a scroll as well, you'll notice that the damage it does is even more. It will start using it, especially like hit a 4k then. Like, a Ripper Demon does a lot of damage. It just does. It is really strong, and if you're not using it, I would suggest that you do at least give it a try. Now, DPS Familiars. The reason people get scared about using them is you don't have a yak. You don't have all that extra food. So if you're struggling, kind of like you're using your yak a little bit, you kind of think, if I use Ripper Demon, I'm going to need those extra 4 or 5 pieces of food that I get from my yak to be able to get through the kill. If I don't have them, then I'm not going to get through the kill anyway, so I might as well just stick to the yak. I get it. I was the exact same back in the day. I was the exact same. Try a DPS Familiar. Try a Ripper Demon. Try a Nihil if you need to use it for accuracy at certain places, and just see what happens. The reason I say this is because if you can kill the boss 2 minutes quicker because you've got a DPS Familiar, trust me, these do a lot of damage. Like, you can see the hits coming through this. He's already took this dummy down to nearly half health on his own. They do a lot of damage, and if you do that damage extra, it's less time that you're in the boss fight, and it's less time that it takes to phase into certain phases. Trust me, you will use a lot less food. It just balances out. And this Ripper Demon, if your DPS is lacking a little bit, this Ripper Demon can carry you so much. It is crazy. They are so good. You don't always have to use scrolls with them. If you're killing a boss that is pretty good gold per hour, then use scrolls. If you're not, then just use it without scrolls. It still does great DPS. But just give the DPS Familiar a try. It's definitely worth just giving it a shot and seeing how you feel with it. If you still struggle, swap back to a yak. But otherwise, just try. Just try to use DPS Familiar. Trust me. Places like Vindicta, God Wars 2, God Wars 1, they will rip the living hell out of those bosses, and you want to just have them with you, because even if you have to bank maybe 1 kill sooner, as long as you can get through the kills faster, definitely worth having. Alright, so we're getting towards the end of the things that I wanted to talk about before I move on to just a few little tips and stuff. And that is going to be your inventory setup. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about, and there's a lot to talk about with it, so it may take a little while, but it's really important. There's been a lot of times that I've seen people send me clips, or I've seen clips of people doing PvM, and their inventory looks something like this. Now, I get it, you've got your overload, you've got some prayer stuff, and you got some food. What else could you possibly need, right? Like, it's not that important to get anything else. This is so wrong. There's so much stuff that you can bring to help you in a fight. Now, I understand a lot of you guys will not want to be doing switches, and you're not going to want to like have to fill your inventory with tons of different stuff, but there's some basic things that you should definitely bring along that are going to help out like a hell of a lot. Even just as a basic player, someone who's just getting into it, there's gonna be so many different things you should bring. So let me load one of my presets, and then we'll get rid of some of the stuff that I wouldn't normally recommend someone who is just learning bring, but we'll talk about that as we get there. Okay, so we'll get rid of the bladed die switch, that's not gonna be important. We'll get Excalibur back. So this here is more looking like a preset that you will probably want to take to a boss. The reason being is you've got your overload, which increases your damage, of course, all your stats by 21. And then you've got your super prayer renewal here. These are really important and really useful to bring. If you don't have the salve overloads that include them with it, then it is definitely worth bringing one of these along, because what it'll do is when you drink it, it will increase your prayer points. It will like restore it a little bit like a prayer potion, but then over time it gives you 595 prayer points over the 6 minutes. This is really useful because it will basically slow down the drain that your cursors have when you're using them. This will mean you don't have to take as many prayer potions with you, as you are reducing the drain rate of it as well. The next thing is vulnerability bombs. Vulnerability bombs are so important as they are a straight 10% damage increase. If you throw these at a target and then it does this big area of effect, that target will now take 10% more damage than it would have done in the first place for an entire minute. So these are worth taking, these are worth throwing at the boss, because increasing your damage by 10% usually would cost you a hell of a lot of money, but it only costs you what, like 30k each, I think? Not even that, 20k each at the moment. So throwing these for an extra 10% increased damage is definitely worth bringing along. The next thing that I would tell you to always bring, every PvMer, no matter where you're going, whether it's God Wars 1 or whether it's Telos, you should always have a shield with you. Shields are too good not to bring. Shields are so freaking good, and I would recommend that you do have one, because shields are going to save your life in so many situations. Understanding what your defense abilities do is super important, so make sure you read through those as well when you do read through your abilities. But having access to the shield abilities is something you definitely want to be able to have when you're actually working on learning PvM. You are going to be including these in a lot of your rotations, in a lot of your situations, and it is something that you want to know about. So always bring a shield with you no matter what. If you're leaving to go do PvM without a shield and act like bosses, then go back and get a shield. Even if you feel like you don't need it, just bring it. Because there'll be a situation at some point where you're thinking, oh, I wish I had a shield here. And trust me, it's just a good habit to have a shield with you. I can't stress this enough. Bring a shield. The next thing is going to be things like an enhanced Excalibur. If you have this, then it is really useful. You can activate it and it'll give you a heal over time. You don't have to do anything else now. That is just going to heal you over time for a huge amount of your health. It is based on your max health level. So if you have 99, great. If not, then it doesn't matter too much, but it will scale depending on how much health you do have. And then at certain bosses, you can use things like Weapon Poison. Weapon Poison will just increase the damage you deal to the boss. It lasts for 12 minutes, so you don't have to be drinking it all the time. And it will apply a poison effect to the target that you're attacking. Now, if the target is poisonable and you have Weapon Poison and Cinderbane gloves, this damage alone will be a huge increase and it's definitely worth bringing along. All you've done is drink 1 dose of Weapon Poison. You don't need to do anything else now for 12 minutes and you're getting a lot more damage out of it, making your life a lot easier. So just check if the boss is poisonable. You can just literally Google search the boss's name, look on the wiki and it will tell you if it's poisonable on there. But other than that, you just need to make sure you bring along a little bit of prayer potions as well. Make sure you've got those like mentioned before. And then finally, an adrenaline potion. An adrenaline potion is really important. The reason being is when you're doing damage, you're going to be going between ultimates. You're going to be using your ultimate abilities, your Sunshine, your Death Swiftness, and your Berserk. They are going to be probably the most important part of your DPS rotations. Getting your ultimates up and then using your thresholds as much as you can while you're in the DPS rotation inside the ultimate. As soon as you use Sunshine or Death Swiftness or Berserk, you want to use that and use an adrenaline potion straight away. This will increase your adrenaline a lot faster than normal, of course, and it means you can fire off thresholds a hell of a lot quicker, meaning you can get more thresholds off during the Sunshine or the Death Swiftness. It just means that you're going to be able to increase the damage that you deal a lot more than if you didn't have access to this. I would highly recommend that you do have an adrenaline potion with you. You may forget to use it at first, but definitely bring that along with you. It is very important. Other than that, for inventory, there's going to be certain places that you want to go that will bring a lot of other things as well. For example, Dominion Mines if you have access to them, or anti-poison if you are going to get poison from the boss yourself. You need to just check what sort of things the bosses do, and eventually you'll be able to sort of think, right, I need this and I need this, and you'll just adjust it as you go. But as a baseline, bringing those basic things like an adrenaline potion, a prayer renewal, vulnerability bombs, and a shield are just going to be way too important for you to miss off. Make sure you bring them with you almost everywhere you go, especially the shield and the vulnerability bombs, that sort of stuff. In fact, all of them. You need all of them. They're just too important to miss out on. So bring those along, and they're nice and easy to use. And then other than that, you can start adding your switches and stuff afterwards, and you can decide your own whenever you want to do it. But these items alone, you definitely want them in your inventory every single time. Alright, so honestly, once you've got the basics of the understandings of the stuff we've just spoken about, you're going to be in a pretty good position. Now, it'll take time to understand all this, and it'll take practice, and actually putting it into action will help out a lot of understanding as well. But once you're at that point where you sort of know what your abilities do, you've got your inventory set up, and you know what all the stuff in there does as well, and you're in a good spot. Basically, where you're at now is putting it into practice at bosses, practicing your DPS rotations, and just improving from there. It is going to take time. I want to stress this like a lot. It is going to take a lot of time to improve to the point where you see other people playing at. I still have so much freaking to improve on as well, and I've been playing and doing PvM for a lot of years, and I do it for my job. Like I do PvM and videos like that for my job. Like I do it a lot, right? But there's still so much I need to learn as well. But honestly, it's going to take a long time, and it's important that you know that, so you don't get put off and that you don't like get burnt out and stressed out or anything like that. There's going to be stresses along the way when you mess stuff up. There's going to be times when you just are getting fed up. Just take a break from doing whatever you're doing, do something else, and then come back to it. Once you are in this position and you understand the stuff and you feel like you're progressing, the next thing that you're going to want to be doing is just focusing on your damage rotations, increasing the damage that you can do, and just getting better and a better understanding of certain situations. Every boss is going to be different. There's going to be places and times that you are going to want to do things differently than normal, but the absolute base standard of what you want to do in a boss fight is go in the boss fight with 100% adrenaline if you have access to the adrenaline crystals. Use your Sunshine, use an adrenaline potion, do as much damage as you possibly can. You do this by getting your adrenaline up to ready to 50% and then firing off all the thresholds that you possibly can get in that time zone. You want to be using these ultimates as your basic sort of like these are your go-tos. You want to be using your thresholds inside these ultimates as much as possible, because the ultimates will increase the damage that you deal on everything. So getting off the higher hitting abilities while you're inside these is super important, and that is why you use... Thank you, dude. And that is why you use Sunshine, Death Swiftness, and Berserk so much. It's really important for you to focus on using those, and it will be a big part of your DPS. But like I say, there'll be situations where it's different. You'll pick this up along the way, and I'm almost certain that you guys will be able to get there. But just focus on getting down the Sunshine and the Death Swiftness, focus on getting the damage out that you can, and then eventually you're going to pick stuff up. Like I say, bosses will take a lot of practice, it'll take a lot of effort, understanding the mechanics. Watch guides, ask questions in clans, ask questions in Discords, like my Discord and other people's Discords as well. People are happy to help. You'd be surprised how much help people will be willing to give you, as long as you're listening and taking it into on board as well. If you guys have any questions about the stuff we've talked about in this video, like I said, it is all the basics. It's the stuff that I've seen a lot of players that are getting into PvM not actually doing, like bringing the right stuff in the inventory, or understanding what their abilities do, knowing to use the right auras and stuff. It's all really important stuff, and while we're not doing a full in-depth PvM guide, this is just the stuff that I wanted to cover to make sure that people understood the absolute basics of that sort of thing when they go to bosses. So yes, we haven't included absolutely everything in this video. It's just stuff that I've seen recently that I really wanted to cover for people to understand. So let me know if it has helped you out. I hope it has. Even if it only helps out like 1 to 10 people or something, I'll be very happy about that. So it makes your lives easier, then hey, the freaking couple of hours it took me to make this is absolutely well spent, and that's fine by me. Like I said, it is going to be not focused on anyone who has really any experience in PvM or much experience in PvM. So I do apologize if you guys have got through this and not really learned anything at that point. Like I said, I did mention at the beginning, so hopefully if you have got this far and you are very experienced, maybe you can leave something down below to give people more tips as well. That'd be super useful. I'm sure people will read through the comments to see if there's any there. But if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you so much to my channel members for the extra support. You guys help out a hell of a lot, and I really do appreciate it. Your names will be on screen right now, of course, as always. If anyone else is interested in joining the channel members, just click the join button, buy a subscribe button. You can see what perks you get while you support the channel. Otherwise, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.